The last 2 Sundays, I have talked about the various dimensions of dreams and the 5 major types of dreams. Today, I'm going to continue talking about dreams, especially the senses and dreams, and how they are expressed in these different dimensions. If there is time, toward the end of the talk, I'm going to talk a little bit about animals and dreams and the Akashic records and Akashic light. I have a lot to put into this morning's talk, so I'll try to stay right on point. About a year ago at the White Mountain Agni Yoga annual conference, our Agni Yoga focus group decided to study and work with the senses. And the reason we had decided to do that is we had read a letter that Helena Rourke, the founder of Agni Yoga, had written to some of her students, and she talked about how important it is to refine the senses. So since that time, I've been really interested in studying more about the senses. And as luck would have it, putting together the talk today about the senses and dreams, I found something in the Secret Doctrine. So I wanted to share what Blavatsky had written in the Secret Doctrine about the senses. She wrote about what happens when one sense is missing. For example, her example was the blind man. She says the blind man will recover his sight through the sense of touch, of hearing, and so forth. And he who is deaf will be able to hear through sight by seeing audibly the words uttered by the lips and mouth of the speaker. She said, but these are cases that still belong to the world of matter. There are spiritual senses that act on a higher plane of consciousness, mental as well as physical correlations with the 7 senses. And she goes on to say that these are clearly explained and defined in the Vedas and in the Upanishads. She goes on to say in the Secret Doctrine that the division of the physical senses into 5 comes to us from great antiquity. But while adopting the number, no modern philosopher has asked himself how these senses could exist, such as being perceived and used in a self-conscious way, unless there was a 6th sense, which is a mental perception to register and record the 5 senses. She goes on to say the 7th sense is to preserve the spiritual fruition and remembrance thereof as in a book of life, which belongs to karma. So you see what she's saying, we tend to be very focused just on the 5 senses. Now, Blavatsky and her team of great ones are telling us more, that there is a 6th sense, and there is also a 7th sense, and how important this 7th sense is because it records all the activity of the 6 senses, which then goes into our book of life and belongs to karma. She said the ancients divided the senses into 5 simply because their teachers, who were initiates, stopped at the sense of hearing. Hearing as being that sense which developed in the physical plane only at the beginning of the 5th root race. Now, I decided to keep this in because in our Wednesday night class at White Mountain, we're studying about the secret doctrine and root races. So I just wanted to throw this in. So bear with me if you're listening to this on YouTube and you have no idea what I'm talking about. I'll get to the actual talk in a minute. So let me repeat this, that the initiate teacher stopped at the sense of hearing as being that sense which developed in the physical plane began only at the beginning of the 5th root race. She said the 4th root race had already begun to lose the spiritual condition, so preeminently developed in the 3rd root race. This is a tremendous statement to study. There's so much in it, and I so can't get into it this morning, but you can, and I think you'll have some revelations. She now goes on to say on an earlier globe, thought transference, clairvoyance, clairaudience, and so forth. In short, all that which is called now wonderful and abnormal, all that and much more belonged to the senses and faculties common to all of humanity. We are, however, cycling back and cycling forward, having lost in spirituality that which we acquired in physical development until almost the end of the 4th root race, and now we're in the 5th root race. We, mankind, are gradually and imperceptibly losing now in the physical all that we regain once more in the spiritual revolution. And it's the way it was spelled in the secret doctrine. It was RE-evolution. This process must go on until the period which will bring the 6th root race on a parallel line with the spirituality of the 2nd root race, which has been long extinct in mankind. So the real key here is the cyclic motion. Okay, so that's it with the secret doctor. Now we'll get into the talk this morning. When we dream, sometimes we have various sense experiences. We see, we hear, we taste, we feel, we smell. All these experiences can indicate that we are in another dimension, depending on the activation of the senses. But as we now know, our 5 senses have to be asleep on the physical plane in order for higher senses to be in operation. Okay? Did you understand that? In the higher worlds, all the senses are interchangeable. This is a very important point. In the higher worlds, all the senses are interchangeable. You can hear through your ear and also see through your ear, and so on. Now, this can seem very weird for a while because we're so concrete-minded. But that's why these physical senses have to be asleep, and we have to have gone out of our body to experience these interchangeable senses. Eventually, science is going to prove that all senses, after a certain stage of development, can also be interchangeable upon the physical plane. So we are developing that a little bit. When we lose one sense, then another sense picks up. See? So that's interchangeable, even though it's a bit flawed. It's giving us a little bit of insight of what's possible. It is not a great mystery because all sense objects are formed by vibration. All sense objects are formed by vibration. We are told that sometimes we can see through our ears or even through our fingers and so on. Now think of this. I'm a violinist and a pianist. Even as a child, it seemed natural to see the notes from a particular piece of music with my ears. I'd see the notes, on the manuscript, and I could hear those notes with my ears. How? Well, I was hearing the music as I read the notes. This is not uncommon. The same with the fingers. In memorizing a piece of music, I could see the music while my fingers played the notes from memory. Isn't that interesting? This also will prove eventually that the senses are communication lines. The senses are communication lines of the human soul extended to the world of form, life, in order to become aware of its many aspects. Thus, it will be proven that there is a center of consciousness in us. I just saw a cat go by. There is a center of consciousness. There is a center of consciousness in us. Now, the time factor is very interesting in dreams. Dreams experienced in our lower mind have time factors. Dreams experienced in the higher mind have no time factors. And if a dream is experienced on both levels of the mind alternately, then we're going to have a bit of chaos. In the higher mind, we can have a dream of 100 years capsuled in 1 second. It's as if we are in the higher mind. In the higher mind, there is also no location. All that happens is universal. Now, in the lower mind, we have location and we have time. Dreams in the higher mind cannot be interpreted by time and location, at least by the concepts of our earth perception. A year in the higher mind is 10,000 years, for example. A year in the higher mind can be, by example, 10,000 years. A location in the higher mind is a state of consciousness. A wisdom given to us in the higher mind often needs 7 incarnations to understand and to actualize. Wisdom given to us in the higher mind often needs 7 incarnations to understand and actualize. Now, confusion occurs when these two times are mixed up in our consciousness, and between the higher mind and the lower mind, and chaos, a little bit of chaos takes place. This is why prophecies oftentimes seem in error. In the higher mind, all physical plane hindrances are transcended. But in the lower mind, the physical level hindrances will persist in our consciousness and act as hindrances in our dreams. So we get stuck. If you are in your higher mind and acting in the lower mind, this is very cool. If you are in the higher mind and acting in the lower mind, then the concepts in the lower mind are not going to distract us, not going to limit us, not going to limit our consciousness. Do you understand that? It's like this is kind of a germane example. It's like you're a parent, a mature, emotionally and mentally mature parent, and you see your child is threatening you with some stupid teenager threat. It doesn't affect you at all. Okay? Because you are emotionally and mentally mature and you know who your child is, and they're not going to play out their threat, and even if they do, you know, there'll be consequences for that child to pay. See, so in the broader sense, when our consciousness during our dream life is functioning in the higher mind, and we see these limitations in the lower levels of the mind, it doesn't limit our consciousness. But if you are in the lower mind and are dreaming in the lower mind, concepts of the hindrances of the physical plane still can act as hindrances. So, for example, if you are facing an iron door, the lower mind says, this is an iron door, I can't go through this. See, but if you're in your higher mind, and your higher mind is active, you're going to be thinking, there's no hindrance here, I can pass right through. On various nights in your dreams, you go through tests. The tests are to make us know where we are in our evolution. It's the purpose of these tests. If we are acting within a time limit, and we are bound in the time concept, you're likely to think, I cannot do this. I cannot do this. Let's call this, I cannot do this, a concept or a hindrance concept. And we will need a long time of training to detach ourselves from these earthly concepts. And then to begin to realize that we are now in a different dimension. See, this is no different. I can't, emphasize this enough. When you die, you want not to be stuck in the lower mind, in your lower levels of consciousness, because why? You'll be stuck there for a very, very, very long time. You think this is all it is. It's like a person dies, they go to the astral plane, they don't know it, and they're still living their life on the astral plane as if they were living their life in the physical plane. So we don't want to have these I cannot do it concepts. So if we work now while we're in our physical body, have these beautiful testing dreams, these tests will prepare us not only for now, but when we make our transition off the planet and go into the higher worlds. We won't be stuck by thinking, I can't do this. When you start controlling your dreams and changing their course, even changing the actors, it signifies that you have an awareness unit. You have an awareness unit or a control center that is not your body, because the body is asleep and you're recognizing that you are an entity apart from your physical body. If your awareness unit is not awake but is instead asleep with the body, all you're going to do with your dreams, well, you're still going to dream. You are going to dream, but these dreams are going to be a reflection of dreams, and these reflections go into your etheric body and eventually into your brain consciousness. But when you disidentify yourself from your vehicles, you begin to control your dreams. So we have to disidentify ourselves. Some of these tests will be in your physical plane consciousness, you'll go out of your body. Or in your physical plane consciousness, all of a sudden you will see through your hand. You'll see through your arm. You will see in a like an altered state of consciousness, wow, I'm not this body. This is a night. Of course, this is not because of drugs. If you have the experiences because of drugs, then it's not real. It's not your soul, see, controlling these experiences. It's the darkness. But if your soul is saying, now is the time, let's give her this experience, you'll never forget it. And you think, my gosh, I'm not my body. I'm not my emotions. I'm not my mind. I'm something much greater. I'm just here to gather and to gain experience so I can evolve. The real self during sleep separates itself from the body. Your real self during your sleep separates itself from the body and the brain, even from the etheric and astral and mental vehicles, if you are advanced enough. And if this seems like science fiction to you, you know there's many, mostly Eastern and Buddhist stories of gurus and saints and spiritual teachers that all had these experiences, and they wrote about them. You know, we don't seem to have that much in this country. I'm not quite sure why. I actually have some ideas, but they're not pleasant, so I won't share that unpleasantness this morning. But they're there. These stories are there until you have your own story, and then it becomes factual. So while your real self has separated from your lower bodies, it goes through a period of freedom. Your human soul enters various planes of existence according to your evolution and registers these experiences. Some of these experiences are related to the formation of your actions and your words and your thoughts. This is important to think about. Some of your experiences are related to the formation of your actions, your words, and your thoughts. These formations are cumulative. They're built up forms as a result of your actions, words, and thoughts. The teachings explain that each of our actions, words, and thoughts create effects on the astral and mental plane, either positive or negative. For example, and this is from the teaching, if our actions are minus means negative action. If our actions are minus, it's minus 200. Now just stick with me with this. If our actions are negative, then basically we're accumulating 200 negative points, minus points. If our words are negative, then we're going to accumulate 300 negative points. If our thoughts are minus 500, now when we move into that astral plane, we see the sum of these numbers as minus 1,000. Which means what? Karmic debt. Karmic debt. Words, actions, thoughts to the minus means karmic debts, and it seems to increase from action and on. Meaning power. So these formations in the subtle planes are various. When we are out of our body, such formations are impressed in our etheric body and pass through the etheric brain to our physical brain. Now just imagine this accumulation of 1,000 minus points and karmic debt, and now we've died and we've moved into the astral plane. And this is how we see ourselves. What are we going to do? Oh, great, now I can wait until I come back into the next incarnation and have to go through the payment of these debts 1,000 times. These formations often manifest in prophetic imagery because the etheric brain and the physical brain are capable of translating the impressions or formations through associative thought forms. And you know what comes from this is fear. Fear. The fact that we experience such dreams suggests that there is a living entity within us who, after the body is asleep, can experience higher phenomena. Now, also in the higher planes, we experience teaching and revelations and new visions that again are impressed. See, this is the plus side now. Okay, that are impressed on our etheric and physical brain with their proper translations. No longer distorted, but clear and proper and beautiful. These higher dreams are more vividly and decidedly translated upon our brain as they are expressed by an advanced soul capable of functioning on higher planes. It's interesting, what's interesting thing is that we do not even need to sleep. When we reach that stage of consciousness, we do not even need to sleep to experience higher contacts. If we can consciously withdraw ourselves out of our body through meditation and contemplation. So if you are developing your consciousness through meditation, through contemplation, you are going to have these experiences where, what does this mean? It means you're doing one thing here and you're doing another thing there because your consciousness has a continuous thread. And there's no disruptions, there's no limiting concepts. See, it's real. And all these tests that we experience in our dream life go toward teaching us how to do these things. As above, so below. So this is why the teaching emphasizes meditation and contemplation. Because it's a process of building that rainbow bridge, that continuity of consciousness. Another type Another type of sleep will be possible if you succeed in building this continuity of consciousness between your brain and the higher worlds. Between your brain and the higher worlds. For such a person, dreams do not really exist because the person becomes aware of what's going on in the higher planes, and they are not caught in the confusing phenomena of the astral world, the etheric world, and the lower mental planes. As we become conscious on higher planes, we even do not need to withdraw from our bodies, which is so much easier. Because when you withdraw from your body, it's a shock. You know, for a while it's a shock because we are so identified with our physical body. But with experience and the accumulation of these experiences that helps us go to build this continuity, you know, between here and there, then we don't have to leave our bodies. We have the antenna and also the psycho-communication lines to penetrate into higher planes. And seated in our lotus, like with our meditation this morning, seated in our lotus, we can register all that's going on in a particular plane that interests us. So that's our future. Great masters are aware of events going on upon higher planes in their brain consciousness. As we watch other planets while sitting in front of our telescopes, they have an antenna that automatically knows what's going on. They also have psychotelescopes and other subtle devices in order to come in contact with events occurring in the higher planes. It is generally known that our daily thoughts and emotions and actions echo in our corresponding system for a longer or shorter period of time according to their intensity. When we are awake, we sometimes disregard or ignore them due to the activities that we have involved ourselves in. But when we are asleep, these activities not only echo in our aura, but also in the etheric and the astral and the mental planes, mixing with each other and with previous echoes that are still remaining. Some of our dreams are an exact mixture of these echoes, and if we are awake in the astral and mental planes, we can study these currents and how they assume color and sound and form. See these senses? How they assume color and sound and form and appear as dreams. Generally, such are the sources of our dreams. It is only after we develop continuity of consciousness that dreams change into actual experiences. Sometimes the higher self can convey certain messages to our human soul. The higher self conveying certain messages to our human soul with strong impressions upon our etheric brain. These are very valuable dreams that will reveal the spiritual future of your human soul and inspire new ways of living and relationships. Okay, so I mentioned that I was going to talk about a little bit about the astral or Akashic light. Akashic light is also called astral light, and it's a very important. These two words are really important to understand, Akashic light / astral light. People talk about the astral light and they think it is Akasha itself. The fact is that it is not the Akasha, but it is like an Akashic mist. It's a mist, so we see the light, but it is like a reflection of the Akashic sphere, the Akashic domain, but in fact it is a mist, and it exists between the sphere and our human mind. Astral light being close to the thought and emotions, the astral light, which is close to our emotions and thought, you know what I'm going to say is going to be polluted, because our thoughts are polluted, our emotional nature is polluted. It is like an agitated, muddy sea upon which certain recordings of Akasha then become recorded in a very distorted and mixed up mess. So most of the so-called Akashic records are in fact recordings of the astral light. The reason I wanted to bring this in is because there are mediums, psychic mediums out there that say that they have access to the Akashic records, your Akashic record, and this is what it says. Forget it. These recordings that come from the, let's call it the mist, do not present any value, and they are highly misleading. Blavatsky, Helena Blavatsky says, and this is a quote, the astral light as a radiation is quite pure, but through the lower planes it descends further and further into matter, dense matter, approaching our terrestrial sphere. And the more it differentiates and becomes, as a result, impure on its very constitution. Do you understand that? Okay. The astral light is a storage of all of our dreams, our hallucinations, our illusions, and destructive or constructive events taking place in the world and in the astral and lower mental planes. It is a complete image of distortion and confusion and disturbances. Animals. Here's a little information about animals which I thought you'd find of interest. The fact is that animals do dream, but, isn't that cool? But their dreams are not repetition of events which strongly impress them during their waking hours. An animal or even a bird lives half in the astral and half in the physical plane. And when they sleep, they awaken totally in the astral plane and live a total replica of their physical life. For example, a bear's hibernation is not an unconscious period, but a period of total astral activity. With their astral body, the bear lives in the astral plane as they would live on the physical plane. When animals are killed, they suffer for a long time because after they leave their bodies, they continue to experience the form of their dying in the astral plane. And I'm going to, even though I have a few more pages of information to share, we're out of time. So let me end with this. It's a quote from Leaves of Moria's Garden, Volume 2, page 124. MM says, dreams and visions are not miracles, but a thread of life. Dreams and visions are not miracle, but a thread of life. That is a knowledge of what is impending, revealed to such an extent as not to infringe upon karma. And again, that's Leaves of Moria's Garden, Volume 2, page 124. Can I just share a couple more things? And there's about 15 or 20 of these points, which I'm only going to pick out a couple of how certain events affect our dreams. One is impressions coming from those who know us. This is related to the thought currents of people who project toward us images that they have built in their minds of us. These images are a mixture of dramatizations of their thoughts, emotions, and actions about us. Influences your dream life. These impressions turn into dreams in your brain. Impressions come from those who have departed that we know, that we knew. If they think about us, such currents reach us from the subtle worlds, and our mind translates them through our reactions and our responses. And this is really cool. This is why I didn't want to close when I could have. This is impressions coming from those who are in the process of incarnation. These souls in general try to contact their new parents before they come into incarnation. They try to contact their parents, and also they'll try to contact old associates and inform them of their incarnation, inform them of their wishes, their plans, also their needs and dreams. Mothers especially are very sensitive in such impressions and dream various kinds of dreams, sometimes without even realize that these dreams are related to their pregnancy or to childbirth. Impressions coming from those whom we've never met. These met physically. These are currents of strong energies of individuals whom we attract because of the similarity of frequencies. Such things not really related to our personal life create dreams to inform us about things that are going on in space. Isn't this interesting? And okay, one more. Impressions coming from archetypes. Archetypes are models of perfection toward which our whole nature subjectively is drawn. Archetypes occasionally, in cycles, send us impressions that evoke striving from our nature. These impressions create those dreams that are related to our striving toward a better state of consciousness and beingness, and they stir us to awaken and work out our salvation. Okay, I'm done. I know it was a lot to pack into a very short period of time, but you know, it'll give us a lot to think about.